I've got 2:30. So yeah, why don't we kick things off? My name is Dan Prue. I'm the membership manager with the Greater Vernon Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank everybody who's joined us today for the town hall, and a special thank you to you, Mel, for taking time out of your day. I hear it's your fourth Zoom call of the day to take your time and answer our members' questions and questions from the community and some of their concerns. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks, Dan, for setting this up. It's a first opportunity to work through Zoom and the Chamber of Commerce, but it seems to be the way of life these days. As you mentioned, it's the fourth Zoom call today for me, but we're getting used to, I wouldn't say used to doing business that way, but more comfortable with it. At least we can connect with people, and it's a little bit more direct than emails. Voice intonation is a little easier to detect than it is in emails, and I'm sure we've all had those situations where we've had an email that was interpreted the wrong way. So Zoom is
Absolutely. It's the options are limited, but it is nice to see a face to go along with the voice. So yeah, I appreciate that. So obviously, your life has probably changed in the last month and a half as MP. So why don't you start off by telling us just what's been different for you lately?
Well, the big change, of course, was on the Thursday of March the 12th when they indicated that Parliament would not be resuming until, well, at that time they said April 20th. We were just about to leave Ottawa at the time, so we had to get prepared to not be there for a great length of time. And then shortly after we got home, many more traveling restrictions were placed. So the workload from my office changed quite quickly to, first of all, helping stranded travelers get home. We had constituents from the North Okanagan-Shuswap that were all over the world. From some were in Asia, we had some in Peru, and my staff worked a lot of extra time and hours just to make sure we could get those people home again. And that was the first couple of weeks. And then after that, it started to be concerns about the local situation as far as healthcare and social distancing and visitors coming into the area. We started managing a lot of those calls. And then it again switched over a little bit more to the returning snowbirds and travelers and their quarantine requirements and what was really legal or suggested. There was lots of uncertainty that way, so we dealt with a lot of calls like that. And I've got to say, my staff has been outstanding through this whole stretch. We've kind of branched off into separate roles, each one dealing with certain pieces of and assisting in my role as the MP, and it's worked out really well. They've been stellar in this really trying time because the call volume has really gone up. But recently it's changed over to helping individuals that are falling through the cracks and helping small business, help for the agriculture sector, and then of course getting used to Zoom calls, and been big changes that way. So it's great at the end of the day when you've helped out a number of people either accessing programs or when they were having challenges reaching government departments. Sometimes we were able to make those connections, but then it's, there's also those that have fallen through the cracks and we haven't been able to help yet, and we still continue to do that. So it's been quite a role change in some ways.
Yeah, it's a really evolving situation for everybody. Obviously, questions today will be a little bit more geared towards small business as they've been greatly impacted through this whole situation, and just making sure that their concerns are heard and we can get them the support that they need. I want to let anybody know that if they have questions, they can submit them to me via the Q&A here, and then I can ask them to Mel. They can be anonymous if you want. But why don't we start things off with the nonprofit sector? So obviously, Mel, as you know, the nonprofit sector provides valuable services for the community at large on an annual basis, but maybe now more than ever. And their ability to fundraise and get sponsorship has been greatly impacted by COVID-19. So what do you think can be done to ensure that they can continue to provide the services that they do?
Well, the big thing is the health and safety, and that's been, the biggest focus for everyone is to make sure that volunteers feel safe coming into work, and our not-for-profit or volunteer sector relies heavily on seniors. That's common everywhere, and probably even more so here in the North Okanagan-Shuswap. And they are identified as more vulnerable to this virus than any other sector of the population. So we want to make sure that the safety measures and the personal protective equipment and hand washing and sanitizers are in place so that those organizations can function. And then the other piece is the funding. And we've seen donations drop off. We've heard that, typical fundraising activities can't happen. When you look at our legions, for example, and the work that they do for our veterans, they've had to close their facilities down, so they don't have their daily operations or their events, their meat draws happening. That's just one example. So we've got to look at ways of restoring their revenues, incomes coming in, and then again keeping their volunteers and staff safe.
Yeah. Have there been any discussions about potential scenarios to help them with some of their revenue generation?
Well, one thing that's been discussed is to increase the tax benefits for charitable donations to not-for-profits.
Okay.
I think that would be probably a big benefit to them. There's some that would probably donate more if the tax credit for that was a little greater. So I think that's one thing that's possibly going to be looked at. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on to the small business sector. I'm finding and hearing from a lot of our members that the most vulnerable of them perhaps are the new businesses, and they would be vulnerable anyways as a new business, but they seem to be falling through the cracks a little bit as they don't seem to be eligible for the CERB, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, as they don't have income of the $5,000 over the last year because they might be not have paid themselves yet, or they are just putting that income back into the business to grow it at the moment. And they also don't seem to be eligible for any kind of wage subsidy because they can't compare their income from last year. So I assume you're aware of that situation. Is there anything that can be done to protect these new businesses?
Well, we're always looking for those individual scenarios that don't fit the pigeonholes that have been created.
Yeah.
Certainly my office is open to the calls and emails. If there's someone that is really struggling to try and figure this out, don't hesitate to contact the office, and we will try and sort it, whether it's through the small business program, through our shadow ministers, or through and on all the way up to the minister's office, or the finance department. We need to find ways of making things work so that people can just survive to get through this. The wage or the emergency response benefit enables people to stay home, and they can still have an income provided they have the minimum $5,000 last year and they're laid off or not able to work because of the COVID situation. We've heard some small businesses struggling to get employees to come back to work because the benefit may have been a little too easy to achieve. So that's one thing we're looking at. Should there be changes to that process? There may be. It's only in place for, I believe, 3 months at this time. At this time, at least. But yeah, certainly small businesses. One that we heard was that a lot of small businesses were actually financed through credit unions, and initially the credit unions weren't part of the business loan program. That has since been changed, but it was still a long process for the credit unions to become accredited, to be able to loan that emergency response out. We've now heard that most of the credit unions should be eligible by the end of the month here. So they'll be able to start rolling that business financing out. So that's a big help. The other one that we've been pushing on from our side of the house is that businesses that were run through just a basic checking account and not a corporate checking account should be eligible. We're still pushing for the government to make changes on that. So those are a couple of the things, changes that we're looking for in what we're doing.
Yeah. So currently, those sole proprietors who are running their business out of a checking account aren't eligible for that assistance.
That's the current situation, and I hate to say that that's things are changing so rapidly here. So I want to add the caveat to anyone that's listening today. What I'm providing is the latest information I was able to get before the call. But as things change daily, we should always be checking. And if a business is feeling that they're falling through the cracks, please give us a call, send us an email. We'll check if there's any changes to the programs and try and find assistance some way if we can.
Okay. I just got a question that came in. It is from a nonprofit, and they're wondering if the wage subsidy is planned to extend beyond the 3 months that are already currently planned.
The emergency wage subsidy, I believe the 3 months is all that is planned at this time, and it may depend on what the situation is. The COVID situation is so fluid that, as I say, things are changing almost daily on that. The Canada Summer Jobs Program was changed somewhat this year so that employers that are hiring summer students or through the Canada Summer Jobs Program, that program will actually be extended right through until February of 2021 this year. So depending on, I think, the restrictions on movement, the restrictions on business, these other programs may or may not be extended. It's too early to tell at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you. I had a call from a gentleman, one of our members this morning, and it was in regards to the new commercial rent assistance that's available. And he, obviously it's a great program. It's looks like it's going to provide forgivable loans to property owners so they can reduce rent for tenants by 75%. However, his concern was that seems to be only eligible for landlords who have a mortgage. And if your landlord doesn't have a mortgage, then it might not apply to them. And essentially you have to, prepare for the good faith of your landlord for him to offer you any kind of relief whatsoever. So are you aware of that issue, or?
I recently became aware of that issue. That program was just rolled out in the past week, and certainly has come to my attention. So I've forwarded that up the line. I believe it'll be going to the minister for a response to that, because, as you state, if the property owner owns the property outright and does not carry a mortgage on it, they're not eligible for the same wage subsidy that their neighbor is. And so their tenant and their tenant are going to be having to cover the full shot, whereas someone else with a mortgage property that rents it out is eligible for the program. So it's certainly one of those pigeonholes that was created and doesn't fit every scenario. So we're going to be looking for changes in that as well. But I've sent that in as a query to try and get an answer and haven't received one back yet. So it's interesting to hear I'd be interested to hear if there's more than one scenario out there like that, or if you've heard if this may be an addition to the one that I've already received.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a few scenarios that match that exactly. Just sifting through some of the questions here.
And there's probably many questions that we can get through in one day, I'll bet, but we can certainly look to do this again.
Yeah. I guess we can talk about the potential rolling out of business. Now, I don't know if you're hearing of how businesses will be allowed to reopen, or if it will be a phased approach based on sector, or if you believe it will be based province by province. How do you see this?
It sounds like it's really going to be up to the provinces to decide which businesses can reopen and start operating again, and what restrictions may be placed on how they can operate, whether there's extra distancing required in restaurants and public spaces. But it'll be the provinces that will decide on that. I have heard that Destination BC put out a bit of a guideline today, whether it's really a written in stone document. I doubt that, but it's basically a guideline for the tourism sector, apparently. And I haven't had a chance to look at that. I just, in the last half hour, I had a conversation with a fellow that had been on a call where that was announced. One of the Zoom calls that I was on today was with the our Transportation Caucus Advisory Committee, and that was our conservative members. We met and we had representatives from WestJet, Air Canada, and Transat on the call. And of course, they're looking at how do they start rolling up again, and how do we create business and tourism and get it established. Certainly a challenge for them. They need ridership on planes to make it viable to put them in the air. So we talked about possibilities of incentives for travel within Canada rather than travel abroad or travel elsewhere. But of course, there's all kinds of challenges around that over airport or airline rights to come and go. But those are certainly challenges. And it's the big thing is, I think if we can start the food sector and the transportation sector, once we're able to open those up safely, I think everything else will fall into place. So that's where a lot of the focus is right now, is transportation and food service.
Okay. You did bring up tourism, so obviously including hotels, they've been significantly impacted by COVID-19. Are you ever aware of any strategies to help the tourist sector move towards recovery? And I know you mentioned that a little bit in terms of air travel and so on, but
I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but there was a committee meeting yesterday, and one of my colleagues actually asked the federal tourism minister what they had for a plan for reestablishing our tourism sector. And unfortunately, the minister admitted that they don't have a plan and they're not working on one yet. So that's something me and my colleagues are really going to be pushing on. We recognize how important the tourism sector is here in the North Okanagan-Shuswap. And we need to build that confidence that people can travel and eventually build up that international travel again. We know that those international travelers are usually the ones that spend the biggest dollars, and we need to build that up. But the hotel and restaurant industry certainly is going to need some help to get rolling again.
Okay. Just going to read some of the questions that have been submitted here. So do you have any comments as to how the process of delivering the rollouts and assistance and the government initiative has gone in a parliament such as this? While they know this is an unprecedented situation, do you find that the minority has provided more leverage, room, roadblocks, etc.?
It's certainly been different to the parliamentary process and the legislation. Typically, we don't see draft government legislation until it's actually tabled in the House. Because of the extreme situation that we're in right now, government has taken the liberty of providing us confidential drafts of the emergency legislation that they're introducing. And that has been beneficial in some ways. We were able to make amendments to the legislation before it was actually drafted, kept the debate quite minimal, able to pass the legislation in the House within one day, but we've been able to, as the opposition, been able to make constructive changes to that legislation, so that when it comes out, it'll be more effective in helping the people and less open to abuse down the road as well.
Okay. Another question here. Says it was good to hear you bring up seniors previously, with possible exception of a minor bump in CPP and OAS and a drop in the required RIF withdrawal. The over 6 million Canadian seniors are being totally ignored while their savings have been shrinking up to 20%. When will there be a meaningful benefit for seniors, millions of whom started, operated, and are still involved with successful businesses in Canada?
Certainly heard there's a number of emails and phone calls to the offices. And certainly our seniors, there's some that are living at that, barely getting by level. And those are the ones we really want to focus on first, to make sure there's assistance from them or for them. So far, the government has been pretty silent on help for seniors, but we have had some hint in the last couple of days that they're looking at some assistance there. There's others that have lost significantly from their incomes through the investments that they had. One of the things that we're looking at for seniors is a change to the registered investment fund withdrawals that would help seniors if they have investments to be able to withdraw them, and also the RRSP funds that we've asked that they'd be able to withdraw from the RRSPs, use that fund to get by in this tough time without penalty, providing that it's replaced by a certain amount of time. So those are the things we're some of the things that are being looked at. But the help for seniors hasn't come from this government yet. Most of the focus has been on employees and businesses to this point, but we're certainly pushing for more help for seniors.
Okay, good to know. Another question, as most of the provinces are still in lockdown, is there any talk about extending the tax filing deadline again? Also, as an accountant, we are finding it very difficult that the individual tax deadline was extended, but not the deadline for sole proprietors and farms, as it's still June 15th. So where accountants had 6 additional weeks to file sole proprietors, farms returns, we now only have 2 additional weeks.
Okay, that one on the sole proprietors, I hadn't been following that one really closely, so I won't comment too much on that. And as far as other further delays on personal income taxes, I haven't heard anything about any further extensions yet. And that's certainly, it's a challenge to follow all of it because we have the federal income tax deadlines, which have been changed, but we're also hearing about municipal tax payment deadlines that are changing as well. So I want to be cautious about saying anything that way in case I get some dates wrong. But if someone has some specific questions, please forward them to the office in Vernon, and we'll try and get some answers back on that. But I haven't heard of further extensions other than what have been announced so far.
Okay. And this one seems to be in response to a previous question that was asked about the RIF withdrawals and so on. So do you plan on rolling out similar adjustments for persons with disabilities and their RDSPs, such as a withdrawal without penalty?
I haven't heard anything on the disability withdrawals. That one certainly be willing to take a look at it. And I want to stress that government is rolling out these programs. I'm an opposition member, so I don't see them usually until they've actually been released. And even then, it's a few days after the official announcement by the Prime Minister that the details come out. So sometimes we get confused that people think that I'm actually a government member. I wish I was in government, but not part of the official government at this point. I'm a an opposition member, so we hold the government accountable for what they're doing or not doing, but what they roll out is often not disclosed to us until after it's actually announced.
Okay. If there are any more questions out there, please feel free to get those in. One comment was there's no increase in pensions or old age pension in April. It was promised. So when do you think it might occur?
I was saying there's been more hint from the Prime Minister that they're looking at something more for assistance for seniors. And what we've been hearing is that seniors are seeing an increase in prices for groceries. Another one that we've heard quite a bit is the increase in dispensing fees, because they're only able to get 30 days of medication instead of the previous 90 days. That one is a provincial issue. So the province has made those changes, and healthcare and pharmacare is all managed through the province. So I don't have too much input on that, but we have certainly heard that part of it, and the increased costs for everyone. These increased costs, I think, are only just starting to mount up now as we move through and probably into next winter. We may see even higher increases to food costs because transportation has changed. The airlines aren't flying as anywhere near as many flights, so some of that highly perishable product that may come in by airplane may not be coming in. There's certainly changes that way. So the big focus has been on people that have lost all or a major portion of their income at this time, and trying to look after them first. And I think the other pieces will come in after that.
Okay. Have you heard word about pivoting funding, such as assistance for schooling, retraining, to help small business owners and workers that may no longer have viable jobs to move into new areas faster, to help support economic renewal in new sectors?
Yeah, we're starting to hear pieces that way, and ideas, and we're certainly wanting to hear any ideas that people have on transitioning. There may be projects that the municipal governments aren't able to move forward on as we go forward here. And there's jobs such as outdoor maintenance, pool lifeguards, and so on that may not happen through the summertime because of either the social distancing issues or health restrictions on opening up those facilities. So how do we find new roles for those people to fit into? And that's one of the things that, I was part of a press release that went out last week where we were calling on the government to come up with a new program similar to the Canada Summer Jobs Program, but a new program to match students and youth with the agriculture and seafood processing sectors, so that those students and youth that can't find a job for the summer can go to work on our farms, because the farms have had a tough time finding employees for the last number of years. Is there a way of matching them up with some top-ups and so on, some assistance with training? But then there's also our high-tech sector. I think there's going to be huge opportunities here for, as we talked about, this is the fourth Zoom meeting for me today. How do we increase those opportunities to work from home or work from remote locations? And one of the things that came up is broadband internet. How do we get that out to a wider segment, especially in our rural communities? And that's a big challenge with holding our parliamentary session. Some people call it a virtual parliament. It wasn't really a parliamentary sitting. It was it's called a special COVID-19 committee that we meet as, and some of our members actually they couldn't work from home because they don't have high-speed internet there. couldn't go to their constituency office because they had social distancing challenges with their staff working there. So they ended up working out of their business garage in order to participate in the call. So certainly challenges and possibilities, potential opening for new technology and new communications opportunities.
Gotcha. There's a comment here. Excise tax regulations currently prevent growth and job creation within craft distilleries. What needs to be done to support distilleries and economic stimulus in communities?
Yeah, I guess where that one came in from, and I've been working with those guys for quite a while now. The escalating excise tax on alcohol in Canada is a huge limiting factor, up to about 10 times what the U.S. is charging for the similar product or the similar sector down there. And it's one of those things, we need to remove the barriers, the taxes that prevent businesses from growing. Certainly want to keep, I'll continue to advocate on that part, that we need to remove the roadblocks from business, from projects moving forward, and make it possible for investors to look at Canada again as a profitable place to do business.
Does the federal government have any plans to support Made in Canada tech initiatives and infrastructure to ensure that even the most sensitive of industries and agencies can use the internet and connectivity safely?
Yeah, the Made in Canada approach or line, I think, is probably going to come up more and more. I've had some interesting conversations with some of my colleagues around that, whether it's made in Canada or produced in Canada. Because I'm Shadow Minister for Fisheries and Oceans, I talk with colleagues right across the country, and we've been pressing the government to come up with programs to put Canadian seafood on Canadian plates. And I think there's a huge opportunity there if we could. Sorry, I'm just going to move my phone here that's ringing. Yeah, if we can connect Canadians somehow, but there's also challenges that way on how much we promote that or how much we restrict other countries from coming in with their products or technologies. The World Trade Organization has rules around that, and we don't want to trigger a trade dispute. So it's a cautious game that we have to play.
Gotcha. I don't see any more questions coming in. So I guess I'll just give the floor to you, Mel. There's no need to take up any more time of yours than we have to. So do you perhaps have any closing remarks?
Well, yeah, I just want to thank you and Richard at the Chamber for doing this. I know it's your first week without Dion there at the helm as well. We're going to certainly miss her, but I'm sure we'll see her around town in the future. But she was always a great part of the show, but I'm sure you and Richard are going to carry on and get us through this tough time. And I want to thank everybody that took the time to join in. These Zoom calls seem to be fairly popular. It's easy for people to just pop in for half an hour or an hour. They don't even have to take their pajamas off if they don't want to. And so it's always a great opportunity. I look forward to doing it again. We'll see what kind of a response we get and how much appetite there is to do it again. Certainly there's way more than we can cover off in a short half hour or 1 hour call with all of the new programs that are out there. And I just want to reiterate again, if anybody has questions about them, don't hesitate to contact the office. Be patient because the phone lines have been busy. If you do get the voicemail, please leave a voicemail. That's the best way rather than just trying to ring and ring and ring again. So please leave a voicemail and we'll get back to you as soon as we can, or send an email. And often the emails are the easiest way to track it because then we've really got the specific details of each individual case. We're working through this together. I want to just, I guess, quickly say thank you to all the essential service providers out there, our healthcare providers, our grocers, our farmers, our truck drivers, everyone that's making it possible for everyone to have food on their table, heat in their homes, and a safe place to be. So thanks again, everyone, for being part of it. thanks, Dan, for putting this on, and we're always there to help if we can.
My pleasure, Mel. Thank you again so much for joining us. And thank you to everybody who attended the town hall today. I want to say a big thanks for being a part of the chamber. If you're a member, we greatly appreciate your support, and it is mutual. So if you ever need anything from us, please feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to answer any questions or concerns that you have, or submit your questions or concerns over to Mel. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Maybe we'll do it again soon, eh, Mel?
You bet. Thanks.
Okay, thanks so much.